My name's Mary Blood. My age is 76, and my birthday is May 2nd, 1947. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. My father's name was Jerome Bernard, and my mother's name was Helen Olive Bernard, married name. I have two siblings. My sister was the middle child, and that's Helen. And my brother was David, and he was the oldest child, and they're both deceased. My grandmother was Elizabeth, but I never met my real grandfather, and I barely knew my step-grandfather. Well, my mother was a game player. When we were young, we used to sit around and play cards. My father was, he was fun. He would tell jokes with us, and he would do that type of thing, but he was pretty much hands-off. And yet, in his later years, I spent more time talking with him than I did with my mother. So we had a lot in common, but as young children, I didn't have that much in common with my dad, and my mom was my central character in my life. And she was very loving. She was always very supportive, and she was a lot of fun most of the time. Oh, favorite childhood memories. I don't know that I have, that anything jumps out where childhood memories are concerned. Traditions, the traditions all, like holiday traditions, all wrapped around church. And one of the things I enjoyed when I was younger was, and that was no matter what church we were in, was Vacation Bible School. I always enjoyed doing that. So most of that type of thing was centered around church activity. Well, I went to a lot of different schools when I was young. And school was always okay. I didn't have any problem with school, and because it was small coal mining camps, everybody knew everybody, and I was the preacher's kid, so I was sort of in the upper echelon. So I didn't have any troubles in school. Didn't have any problems academically either. I graduated. That changed when we moved to Ohio. I started having academic problems right away, and everybody was so far ahead of me, it was like being lost. So that made school terrible. I hated it. And then a year or so into moving to Ohio, things happened at the church that made things hard for us at home. And I can remember wearing cardboard in my shoes because Mom and Dad couldn't afford to buy me a new pair of shoes to go to school. And I hated going to school like that. And so that just made it even worse. But I graduated from Bellevue Senior High School in Bellevue, Ohio. It was a little better there. I graduated in 1965. Well, the pants that you pulled on that had the stirrup pants, Angora sweaters, short skirts. They were like here, not as short as they get nowadays, and boots, cowboy boots. At one point was at least for me it was. I don't think it was for the general population, but it was for me. The white ones. When I was real young, I wanted to be a missionary. probably in my teen years, I decided that they put me through through a test at school and said I was suited to be a secretary. And that's pretty much where I ended up being. Um, Not because I necessarily wanted it, but I thought because they thought I would be good at that, that I would be good at that. And so that's the path I took. I've thought about that a lot since you asked. Honestly, boys weren't in my wheelhouse until probably my last 2 years of high school. Just didn't, they weren't anything to me. But I wish he wasn't sitting here, but the truth is I had a crush on Gary when I was in my junior year. We went to church together for some period of time, the same church, and he didn't see me for the birds coming. He couldn't have been less interested in me, but I was interested in him. So I think probably my first crush was Gary. The first serious feelings I had was for Ron, who ended up being a fiance and didn't survive. He was killed in a motorcycle accident. I worked at the American Crayon Company in Sandusky, Ohio, and I was a secretary. I can't remember his name, but it was a doctor show. That was back when I was in my freshman year of high school, and he was dark, my type. Was tall, dark, and handsome, and he was, and I can't remember his name now, but oh, I just thought he was wonderful, and I actually got Mom to spend the money that we didn't have. And that was a fad that was popular at that time, was these doctor shirts that had the stand-up collar and the buttons down this way, and he wore that in his show. So I just had to have one. I just had to have it. So she spent the money and got me one.
What was that? Vince something.
Doctor, I can't remember his name. He was good looking. Well, when you say childhood, do you mean real young?
In your childhood, did you have like a childhood best friend when you were younger?
No, because we moved around so much. I'd have friends and we'd go out and play or something, but not someone that I wanted to be friends with all the time. Probably didn't have that kind of a friend until the last 2 years of high school, and then there were 3 girls that we were really close. And it was Luetta Zickafus and Brenda, can't remember. Huh?
Collins.
No. I can't remember her last name, Brenda, and the other one, I can't remember her first name, but there were 3 of us, and we were on the phone together all the time. We were in a lot of the same classes at school, a lot of the secretarial classes at school, and whenever we got a chance to be out and around, we were together. They were really good friends. Mom, again, took me out driving. I was about 20 years old at that point. She took me out. She says, "You need to learn how to drive." And so we'd go down into Bellevue, and I'd drive around Bellevue. We'd go out on the dirt roads. That's where I started, was on the dirt roads driving. And I drove a standard. So I wasn't learning on an automatic. I was learning on a standard, which was a little more of a challenge. And then finally, when she decided I could drive and I was safe on the roads, then we went down into Bellevue. I'm driving the whole time, and she had me parallel park. I'd practiced it before, but she had me parallel park. And she chose, there was on a side road, there were 2 police cars parked there, and there was a space between them. And she had me parallel park between those 2 police cars. And when I was able to do that, she says, "Well, you'll pass your test now." Well, we met in school. maybe. We may have met in church first. And then we went to the same high school together. We didn't have any classes together that I remember, but except for study hall. We did have study hall. And he was always doing something to irritate me in study hall. He thought it was wonderful to push my buttons. And so one day, the big memory I have from that is we're sitting across the table from each other, and I'm doing my homework. And I had it almost all filled in. And he grabs it out from under my hand and starts erasing all of it. And I'm grabbing back for it, and he wouldn't give it up. And he was erasing all of I just spent 45 minutes putting in all those answers, looking them up and putting them in. And he's sitting there erasing all of them. I was just furious with him. Just furious with him. I said, I'm going to raise my hand and get the teacher over here if you don't give me back my homework. When I started to put my hand up, he finally pushed it back over. And there was one other time when we were sitting in study hall. He came in the morning. We had it in the morning before class and then the last study hall of the day. And he came in, he'd been out of school for about a week. I said, oh, so you decided to come to school? I got sprayed by a skunk, I couldn't come to school. That was funny.
So when did you get engaged and married?
Well, that was quite a number of years later. That was 4 or 5 years later. It was after Ron had been killed, probably maybe almost a year after he was. And my mother decided, again, my mother stepping into my life in a big way, decided that I should, that I needed a friend. She decided that when Ron got killed, I needed a friend. So she calls Gary and tells him what happened and couldn't you come over and be friends? And so that's where we picked up our friendship again. And we just kept doing things together. Not really as boyfriend and girlfriend, but it just seemed to get more that way. He had a friend that was from Bellevue that had come back to visit. We went roller skating. I didn't know this at the time. We went roller skating. I don't know if it was Helen Ann went or what, but it was 2 couples. And the other guy told Gary, says, I really like her. Is she seeing anybody? And Gary told him to keep hands off. So that I found out later. But it was just, it kept growing and growing until it got to the point where we were in love. And then on December the 18th, this is burned into my brain. On December the 18th, I was over, he had a mobile home. And I was there at the mobile home. And we were sitting on the sofa in the living room and talking. And then he says, I got to ask you something. And he gets down on his knee in front of me and says, would little old you like to marry little old me? And I said, yes. That was December the 18th of, let's see, we got married in 71. 71, I think. Yeah, because you were born in 72, right? Stephen was born in 72. So, yeah, it was in December of 1970. Yeah, it probably was 1970. When we got engaged.
16.
Yeah, and then we got married on February the 5th of 71. No, we didn't get married in 7. Anyway, I always think it was 75th. Anyway, that's when we got married. Was, well, from December to February till we got married. So it had to be 71. We got engaged. Oh, heavens. A lot of them that I don't remember anymore. The Vietnam War. And a lot of minor, well, what nowadays would be considered minor events. And of course, the towers coming down and Reagan is president. He was in, and at the time I thought that number 2 Bush was a good president, and he wasn't. He had me snowed. So the Berlin Wall coming down. Trying to think. I think there was probably an Israel war in there someplace, but I was not. That was back when that would have been in the 60s, and I was not focused on world events, so that didn't say anything to me. But I think there was a couple of wars over there. But I think the most recent one is the towers coming, big events, and of course the October 7th massacre in Israel by Hamas. The 1970s through the 1980s, because that was when we were establishing our family. I had 3 children during that period of time. My parents lived next door to me. They were retired. They were older. Gary's folks were right down the road from us. They were retired and they were older. We got our horses and enjoyed doing the horseback riding and stuff, and that was establishing a home, having children, and then getting into the horse life. Horse ownership life was the fun part of that. Well, I was always good as a secretary in the business world. My personal life, I don't know if I have any real strong qualities, but I would say, I don't know, I was slow to anger, and I guess that's probably the best. I was able to keep things to myself. When I would get upset or get angry, a lot of times I would internalize that and wouldn't express it. My favorite animal is dogs. Although horses ranked right up there with the dogs for a number of years. And I liked cats too. I really liked cats, so those 3 animals. But I think dogs probably hold the highest position. And my favorite color is red. And what was the other question? Oh, my favorite food. Well, if you're talking sweets, coconut cream pie. And if you're talking just regular food, right now I'd say it's pickle pasta salad and Gary's potato salad. I had my teeth pulled. I had so much pain from the time, well, as far back as I can remember. I can remember being in 4th or 5th grade and sitting at night with a pillow up over my face and rocking because my mouth hurt so bad. So I will never regret that. And I don't regret getting married. I think a lot of people that get divorced do, but I don't regret getting married because I had my family from that. So I think those are the biggest things that I don't regret. As I get older, I've learned that I should have spent more time relying on God instead of relying on myself. I just was so busy with my life that for the majority of it, God just was a side issue. And I think a lot of young people are that way. They're so busy with their families that they get that way. But if I'd have spent more time in the Bible and spent more time praying, I might not have had some of the problems I had. Well, I hope they remember that I loved them. And maybe they'll have one memory that'll stand out that'll tell them that. And so I guess that's probably what it would be. Well, I was happy every time I had a baby. Although I was a little disappointed that all 3 of them were boys and I didn't get a girl. I was building a baseball team. I was elated when I found out that uh, Tesla and Stephanie had made a profession of faith and were baptized. That was huge for me. Um, but just, people's birthdays, weddings, those were generally joyful occasions. I would say that what you need to do is take time to make decisions. You're going to find decisions in your life from the time you're in grade school until you're in high school, until you find a job, until you get married, when you have children. Just take your time to make decisions and make sure you're making the right decision. Be discerning and make sure that you don't jump into anything right away. Uh, Take a day or two to make any decision. Nothing's going to stop within a few minutes. So take a day or two to make a decision and pray about it. Most of our family are Christians. We know how to pray. Pray about it. Ask the Lord if that's the right decision for you. And if it's the right decision for you, you will know it. You won't necessarily hear a booming voice out of the skies, and you may not even hear that quiet voice that you hear in your head saying you shouldn't do that, or yep, that's the right way for you. But you will have a peace about whatever decision you make. And then once that decision's made, go whole hog. Go for it. And no matter what the barriers are that you come up against, just keep going and keep going until you get to a point where you know you can't do it anymore. And then be willing to step away from it and take a different path. We don't all of us stay on the same path for our entire life. And so take your time making choices, pray about it, and then do whatever you have to do to stay on that path until you can't stay on it anymore and you need to change what you're doing or who you're doing it with. And the other thing I would say is try to be in your personal life with your partner, with your friends, try to be forgiving. You're going to have to love them warts and all. That doesn't mean you forgive everything they do, and forgiveness is based on repentance. So try to be forgiving in your lifetime as much as possible, because you're going to need forgiveness even when people don't repent. You're going to still need to forgive them until it gets to a point where the transgression is so big you can't forgive it anymore. So stay on the same path if you can. Be willing to change paths if you can. And keep the Lord in your picture. Don't get so busy that you forget to ask Him what you should do and to help you then do it. That's about it.